everyone. Welcome back to the Talent Whisperer podcast. It's your host, Chipochedu. And today I've got a special guest, Lisa. I'm going to say your initial as well. Then I'll just call you Lisa for the rest of the podcast. Lisa J Alton. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Alton?
yep.
Lisa is one of the world's leading innovation and brand strategists. She works with many of the globe's biggest businesses and brands, and she helps them reinvent and shape their strategies for success, especially in the future world. She has been featured by Entrepreneur magazine, big magazine if you know it, and is a host of many leading business platforms. Lisa is also a successful entrepreneur and has owned many businesses. And as a strategist, she's actually worked with some of the world's biggest brands like Vodafone, Coca-Cola, Hennessy, FIFA, big brands. And I'm really excited to just getting to know you, Lisa. Lisa says her passion lies in seeing businesses and young humans thrive through leading with purpose, creativity, and imagination. Lisa is also an author. We're going to talk about that some more. Lisa is also an author. She's a well-being coach. So you can imagine we have many, many things to talk about because most of the stuff that you do excites me. So welcome, Lisa, to the Talent Whisperer podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get to know you. And on this podcast, we really believe, I think, and I've seen this with a lot of other podcasts, I think to get to know someone, it's always useful to go back, to kind of see what they were like as a child. And when we go back to Lisa as a kid, were there any signs, when you go back and try and connect the dots, were there any signs you'd be doing exactly what you're doing right now?
Wow, that's such an interesting question because, firstly, I'm Zambian born.
Oh, yay!
Yes.
Where were you born?
So I was actually born in Luanshya.
In Luanshya?
Yes, so
nice.
Copperbelt. So this
okay.
is why every time I come back to Zambia, I just feel so grounded, and for me it's just always so beautiful being in this country that just has so much soul and people are connected to their spirituality and kindness, and I often just think wow, I wish we could bring the world through Zambia.
Listen, I love Zambia and I love being Zambian. And my grandparents, I used to go to Luanshya a lot. My grandparents I wasn't born in, my brother was born in Luanshya, but my grandparents lived there. So my grandfather was a driver for the breweries. My grandmother was a nurse at one of the biggest hospitals in Luanshya. So I also feel pretty connected to the place.
Yeah,
so
cool. So I am Zambian born, and actually yesterday we were at the University of Lusaka doing an incredible session with young humans. Like you were saying, one of my passions and purpose is around seeing young humans thrive. And so when you talk about the young Lisa, yesterday what we were speaking around is one girl asked me, how did you get inspired to be a brand strategist? And I said to her, I feel like we've got these unique fingerprints. We all look different. As a human race, we could have just been clones, right?
We could have.
We could have all looked the same, but we're all different, which means we've all got these different gifts.
Yeah.
And so I would say, yes, entrepreneurial spirit from the age of 5. I was hustling, I was buying sweets, I was repackaging them, I was selling them on the streets. I was always kind of into business. And also always very intuitive around sensing people. So even from a very young age, and it might be similar to you being in HR, a lot of people would come to me. And I would just bring and share some light. And so I find, often we sense that in our gifts when we're younger, and then the hustle takes over.
Yeah.
And I would say only in the last 3 years have I really started actively stepping more into my role as a healer, which definitely is one of my gifts, and I just do it in different ways,
Amazing.
And strategy is the other gift. I love strategy. I'm a big advocate of doing what energizes you and what you love. Because if we don't do what energizes us and what we love, we're not going to have the energy to make that into a success, right?
Right.
So I would say, reflecting back now, I definitely feel I'm in my truth more than I've ever been.
I love that, in your truth. Anyway, before I I lose track of thought, I'm going to go back again. So I'm going to go back to your high school days. So when you were, you were in high school, you were matriculating, what were you hopeful for? What were you thinking you'd do with the rest of your life? And then did it pan out the way you thought, or did you end up doing something different?
High school, moving into university, my sister was super successful at a very young age. And I remember that first year going like, what am I going to do? You know, we all have that age where you are just like, and I remember her saying to me, and it was the best advice someone's ever given me. She was just like, Lise, do what you're good at. Do your strengths. And so actually I was going to study neuroscience. And I went down the path of business and marketing.
Oh, wow.
And that path of business and marketing did take me into, working with all these incredible brands and celebrities and sports people.
Yeah.
Which I just feel, and I'm not sure if you have the similar experience, it's like all of those little pieces of the puzzle start to join up when you start to really come into your truth and your power, and you go, oh, that's why I had all of that journey. That's why I was placed there, to start to bring things together. So interestingly enough, when I was younger, I actually wanted to be a life coach. But at that age, when I was 18, I was like, but I'm like 18. Like, could I be telling like 30 or 40-year-olds?
Can I actually give life advice,
Yeah. And now I'm starting to move back into that. Yeah.
Interesting. So how do those two things, how have you got those two things to kind of come and marry, right? Because you sound like you love strategy and marketing and brands, which is what you do. But there's this big side of you that's coming up, which is the wellness and the healing and the life coaching. So in a world where we're now seeing that you can be a lot of things, I think that's one of the messages I also just love to perpetuate. I have an HR background. Now I have a podcast. I'm going into media as well. And I keep telling myself, I don't have to be one thing, right? But it's still always a back and forth in my head. Like, how do I introduce myself? What comes first, And it sounds like you're talking about equal sides with passion. How have you come to just marry those two very different fields? And what do you lead with? Say when you're introducing yourself, when you meet people, when you go into the room, what are you leading it with? Are you leading with your marketing side? Are you leading with your coaching side?
Yeah, and I totally hear you there, because often, we've been in this society which creates identities, and we become so attached to one identity. I often talk around, I'm not one identity.
Yeah.
I'm multiple identities.
I'm not one thing.
I'm a mother, I'm a healer, I'm a strategist, I'm not actually stuck in my identity, and to the point where I almost started like going, well, I'm just like this multi-dimensional human.
Yeah. And I think we are.
We are. That is what we are as humans. Hence, like you'll see even in my book, it's the rainbow. We are these multiple dimensions, and I'm really trying to drive that narrative that you don't have to do one thing or the other. You can actually just align with your gifts. And so when you say, what do you walk into the room with? It depends. I'm in different rooms.
Yeah.
So I know what my skill sets are depending on what I'm working with. But strangely enough, over the last 3 years, a lot of my corporate clients were so overwhelmed and so stressed and so anxious, and they'd been going through the most with COVID, that I was like, hold on, I've been studying this stuff since the age of 13. So, I'm a trained meditation instructor, heart math practitioner, energy healer. I've spent fortunes of money doing all this behavioral science and personal development.
Amazing.
And so when we went through that period, I was like, but wait, I've got all the tools for you.
Yeah.
And suddenly I started stepping out of actually doing strategy for a lot of my corporate clients into moving into very intimate, vulnerable conversations and helping them with meditation and well-being.
Oh, wow.
And so I think we're actually at a beautiful space after the trauma that the world has gone through. And there's certainly a lot that people are still dealing with, that people are breaking free of going, but Lisa was only doing my board strategies. I can now see her helping us with well-being.
Yeah.
And so even when I'm now doing strategy workshops for clients, I'm actually really talking about the fact that we can have a business strategy, but at the end of the day, it relies on humans.
Yes.
And if humans are having a lot of stuff personally going on,
Yeah.
how are we going to deliver? So I'm actually bringing a lot of the strategy planning where we make strategy commitments, but then I include the well-being component into those strategy workshops.
That's really cool.
And it's becoming this incredible, and again, without trying, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's natural
I'm allowing
to you.
the flow
You
to
can
just
do
happen.
both. Yeah.
These worlds of almost a little bit of spirituality and business and well-being are all sort of starting to come together. So and that's when I was saying to you, when you look at the pieces of the puzzle and you go, oh, I was placed there. You know, I don't know if you've ever had that life situation where you think, why am I placed here? You know, as a strategist, I've been placed in film or fashion or sports, or like, you know, do a lot of global impact work. And sometimes only in hindsight do you join the dots and go,
Yeah.
oh, wow, okay, this is all starting to make sense now.
And how open are you finding? You work with some big brands, and with a lot of, I guess, big brands come, you know, they've had the longevity in business, so they're kind of set in certain ways. Like you said, corporate clients, they can be super corporate-y. How open are they being to the element of well-being and spirituality, like you said? And do you think COVID had a role to play in how open we've become to letting well-being become part of our bigger strategies?
Yes, I do. I think when you have a human need, because we're dealing at a human level, and most people that work with me will know, in general, I'm just show up as who I am. I'm not about projecting or titles, and I think that humans make up businesses, humans make up the world, and you know, a lot of humans have felt this and gone, wow, we need this. You know, and I think that's always the beauty, is like through these contraction, you know, everything in existence exists in contraction and expansion, right? Seasons contract, then they expand, they bloom. And even our existence starts to work that way. We have these places of contraction where we have pain and we have trauma, and then we expand. If we only expanded into only positivity all the time, we would eventually disappear into the light. Eventually, we just kept on expanding like this, right? And so I think that's the beauty of what that brought, was allowing people to really go inward, to really experience this pain, to then go, wow, we're not really taking care of ourselves. You know, we do need this.
And we're more, I think I say this often, that COVID just, you know, I knew I used to work with moms, you know, I knew like, oh, this is a mom, and like, I knew what that meant in theory, but COVID made me see, you know, like I now got to see that I work with moms, because, you know, it was easy to see on a call how much someone was juggling. And then you got to realize, like, wow, I actually work with people with families. Like, it got to sink in. And you're so right. I think we were made to see the world really differently, each other really differently. And I guess with that came an openness to the fact that we were whole, not in the way we used to put it in our visions and strategies and culture, like we are whole humans. Like we became, really became whole humans.
The masks came off.
The masks came off. That's it.
I remembered I had some crazy experiences during lockdown. I had some crazy camera experiences. I had some of those. And I remember having a meeting with somebody that was very much in a senior position, and she was sitting there on her couch. She had no makeup on. She was eating a bowl of popcorn, and I just went, wow, you know, like these masks have come off. Whereas when people were in the office before, it was that corporate speak, and you needed to look a certain way.
We looked a certain way. We talked a certain way. Oh my God, you're so right. But when you think about the journey to becoming your authentic self, right, and leaning into this life where you're just like beautiful, living out of your gifts, and this is what you want for others, I found that these paths to authenticity are rarely paved with like roses. You know, it's not like you go skipping down this road and it's like sunshine and it's normally
unicorns,
like
no unicorns were there, no unicorns.
no unicorns were there. It's normally like hardships that kind of lead us to getting to know ourselves at a deeper level, and then realizing like setting boundaries usually come with your boundaries being broken. You know, like there's a lot that we just learn about ourselves when we, what's the word you use, when we contract, right? Or when we're going through a tough time. So let's talk about Lisa now. What are some of the life-defining moments that I would say normally it forces you, kind of forced you to becoming Lisa today, where you live out your life like authentically, fully, and just out of like that, like out of your gifts, like your real self?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely no unicorns, definitely
Yeah.
no roses. I was forced off the path.
Yeah.
It was very intense. The last 3 years have been, I think, as a young human growing up, I had a lot of trauma around about the age of 5. I was molested, I was raped. I created an identity within happiness, within expansion, right? But the reality is that human, that energy still exists in you. And at some point needs to come out.
Yeah.
Because if it isn't out, I don't think we step into our gifts. So for most of my life, up until the last 3 years, I was that very high-functioning, happy human.
Yeah.
I then got hit with COVID, which actually was a viral attack to my brain and my central nervous system. It was on the first wave. None of the doctors had seen this.
Yeah.
My eyes were not moving from left to right. I couldn't be on screens for months. My optic nerve was damaged.
All from COVID?
Yeah, it was a severe viral attack to my central nervous system.
Yeah.
It just went to my central nervous system. You know, I didn't know who my family was. I couldn't complete my sentences.
Wow.
So it was a proper halt, pause, because the reality is when your central nervous system is impacted, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
There's really not much you can do. And I was kind of like a malfunctioning robot, like.
Oh, wow.
Where the whole system was just completely off. So during that time, I really experienced suicidal thoughts. I experienced panic attacks. You know, my whole biochemistry, my whole neurochemistry was off. It was an intense journey. But at the time, I kind of went like, whoa, okay, this is taking me onto a new path. And by the way, I've got all of these tools that I've been studying that I can start to put into practice.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a big advocate for Western medicine. And the docs were like, you need to go on some serious chemicals. Let's get your brain reset. And I was like, I know other ways of doing it. I'm going to meditate. And I would keep going back to them. And they were like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, I'm doing it with the tools I know. And actually through that process, I discovered heart math, which is really around mind-heart coherence. It's really about focusing on your heart and breathing through the heart and then using the right emotions to shift the brain chemistry, right? Because we all know when we're in a state of obsessive thinking and our chemistry is not working here, we can't change it with our thoughts. It's really actually the heart center that starts to bring that back into balance. So when we're in balance, our heart rhythm looks like that, like orderly waves in an ocean, right? And that sends the dopamine, the serotonin, all the feel-good hormones. Yeah. When we're in stress, anxiety, panic, the heart rate is looking like this, and that's sending cortisol, the stress hormone, and we get in the pattern. Yeah. So we start there. So that was a long recovery journey of slowing down.
So you were forced.
I was very much forced because the nervous system thing is a real force. It's a real like stop, slow down, step back in. And during that process, I remember saying to my partner, who is one of my business partners, and we were during this crazy time where, you know, business also needed to be recalibrated. Also was interesting as a strategist. I mean, people pay me to use my brain. And
now your brain was not functioning.
But yet I actually used the intelligence of my heart, which, by the way, has more neurons than the brain. Our hearts have more neurons than the brain, right? So
I didn't know that.
Often we just think the brain is the center, the executive function, but actually the heart sense also carries a lot. So it was a long process. And then earlier last year, I was actually diagnosed with a melanoma. And that's when I was like, what?
No way. This is a lot.
Hold on a minute. 3
Yeah.
years ago, I was like, never sick. When I felt sick, my whole team was like, oh, what is going on? Like, very high functioning. And this then manifested, and I was like, didn't sleep for a week. The panic attacks came again. I started using the tools. And on day 7, because I'm working a lot, 777 has really been coming to me a lot, this number of 7. On day 7, I was like, F this, man. I'm going to take my power back.
Yeah.
And I'd actually realized I'd become a victim to my environment. I'd gone from being someone that existed a lot in the state of love to actually being quite fearful when your body gets hit like that, to what's going to take me down the next time. And so when the melanoma came, and that's when I really now started a journey, which is the keynotes I'm doing now, which is the 7 keys for unlocking your inner power, where I started to work on the physical.
Yeah.
I got off the temptation hamster wheel. I stopped drinking, I stopped red meat, I stopped sugar. I started to really take care of my physical body.
Yeah.
I started to deal with the emotional stuff, the trauma.
The trauma.
Because often that emotion sits in the body for long periods of time, and when it gets to the point of cancers and these severe illnesses, you've become so disconnected with your physical body. And obviously also
But
with
the trauma is still there, like festering.
And it's disconnecting us. It actually disconnects us. And often those severe traumas take us out of our body, that we're not even that connected with the body.
Yeah.
And obviously with the central nervous system, which we know, the nervous system, we all just made up of all these cells with little signals. So the signaling was also not working that well. The optic nerve had been damaged, which means I couldn't get a lot of light. And our skin, we absorb light by the eyes or the skin, which had probably led to the melanoma. So I really started to work on the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual.
Wow.
And all of these layers. And I, through this process, have just realized how I feel like the human superpower is responsibility, the ability to respond. I responded.
Yeah.
At that point, I responded. I was like, this is going in the wrong way. I'm going to start responding. And the more I started to respond, the more I started to become more aligned to my gifts and who I was.
Yeah.
And so often when we don't respond, right?
Yeah.
And we all have these things.
Yeah.
Then we're standing in the middle of the tornado and we're going, I'm in the middle of a tornado.
Powerless. Yeah.
I'm powerless, but I'm not going to respond.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this coming back to your authentic self, and again, this work is now merged around this inner power. Work that I'm doing is about bringing our power back. Because so often we give it out to temptation or not responding.
Yeah.
Or people pleasing.
That not responding is very powerful, because I know there's a quote somewhere that says like, well, things can happen, or it doesn't matter what happens to you, because, you were 5 years old and you went through something really traumatic that you couldn't control because you were a child. But so many years later, what has mattered is your response. Because we have all these shared experiences, and sometimes what differentiates the people that are living, an authentic life and feeling good about themselves versus when we're still stuck, we can't get past the bad things that have happened to us, is normally how we respond. So I haven't thought of it the way you've actually said it, where you say it's like a responsibility, because that's what it means, that it's on you and no one else can respond for you.
But not heavy. Because often we feel responsibility is a weight.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's our power. And I think also in the journey, just looking at, you're talking about trauma, and when you are as you would know, with kids, you can't respond.
Yeah.
How actually just having that ability to not only respond, but view, am I in my wounded self? Or am I in my empowered self? Because through my journey, I've started to observe my behavior. We're my wounded version.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that
exactly
deep
what you
wound.
mean.
And then you go, hey man, but I'm actually just acting out of being wounded. And we almost don't see it until we see it.
Until after it happens. Like, where did I react from? And I I didn't call it my wounded self. I always say, oh, I think I'm projecting. I don't even know what I'm projecting from sometimes, but those are the actions that don't make you feel good. You reacted some kind of way, or you snapped at someone, or you just know that wasn't you. And you keep wondering, like, that didn't make me feel good. My response to that didn't make me feel good. And I guess that's when we're responding from our wounded selves, is whatever response that comes there rarely makes you feel good. Even though you came out on top, even though your action fed your ego, you thought, yeah, I showed them, but deep down it just doesn't feel good. And I think those are, like you said, the reactions that come out of your wounded self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus responding.
Yeah.
Taking a step back, pausing, actually being in your own power, and then going, how am I going to respond? Yeah.
That's really powerful. But when we sum you up, I know we've talked about, I know we've talked a lot about your gifts, but when we just like sum up Lisa in a few things, what would you say are your gifts and talents? Like what have you come to kind of like establish as this is Lisa and these are my gifts?
Perspective. So you'll see even with that book, I remember my publisher, and I was very deliberate on writing a really simple, fun business book. I don't think the world needs more complexity and philosophy. I would say it is perspective. I'm seeing that actually now with both my healing work and my strategy work. People come to me and I just look at things in a very different light and bring a broader perspective. And with the healing work, I'm just helping people with a series of questions that bring perspective.
That's powerful, perspective. It's not a very it's not a very natural thing that comes to us, which is what I'm saying it's a powerful gift, because perspective normally is everything. Situations arise, and sometimes what also guides how you respond, is perspective, is being able to shift. Oh, I was seeing it like this. How about I see it like this? And there's so much, like you said, there's so much power in that, being able to shift your perspective and being able to see something from somewhere else. And if it's a problem, then being able to solve it. Or if it's, it governs your response and your response comes from a place that's not wounded. It normally just allows for more, I guess the word's peaceful. Like your life is just a little more peaceful or a little more fulfilling when you're able to change your perspective when challenging times or bad things happen,
And I think on perspective though, you may have experienced this as well. I experienced too much this last 2 years, is when we are attached to a past trauma, we're wearing the glasses of that trauma through every interaction we have in the now.
Yeah.
Until we see that attachment, and that generally that attachment creates real disharmony within ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I went through that again with the 5-year-old trauma, where I was like, what? Wait a minute, am I seeing every person in the now with the perspective, with these glasses of what I've experienced? Because I was talking with a friend about this last night. We are AI, right? Humans are learning machines. That's what we are. We learn by experience. All of those experiences become our memory banks, and those then shape our perspective.
Yeah.
So the more you start to move into this non-attachment and actually see, like, what am I attaching to that's creating my suffering, and release that, you get this freedom, ultimate freedom, and almost like perspective starts shifting. So it's quite a thing, obviously as a strategist, I'm very non-judgmental. I'm somebody, I'm non-classist, I'm Zambian born. My daughter and I moved through many different worlds because as a researcher and strategist, you are that. And so I feel I've also got that ability to just see humans, just see humans from all angles.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the personal note, I've really been working on what glasses am I putting on based on my previous experiences, and can I lose that attachment, just keep on losing attachments, because the more we can just lose those attachments, the more free we feel, and we just really start to see things in truth. So like, I woke up a few nights ago and I was like, but hold on a minute, because we're talking now about these positive and negatives, right? And I'm like, is there such a thing as positive or negative? Because now I'm going, the most negative experiences that I've experienced in the last 3 years have been the most positive.
Have been the most positive. Yeah.
So is there good or bad? I'm not sure. Is it just that which is?
Perspective.
Or is it just that which is? You know, if we took away this labeling which the brain does on this is good or this is bad, this is positive or negative, and just saw it as that which is,
it's just experiences.
we would be peaceful.
It's just experiences for you. It's the things that you need to experience. So I guess the length of good and bad, it's also a matter of perspective, because the bad experiences, I've found that, which is why I was asking about the road that led you to this point. I've found that everything that has shaped me to becoming a better person has seldom been what would label as good. It's always been the things that you said, like the hard things. You kind of come out of that better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before we run out of time, let's talk about the hustle hack.
Yes.
First of all, I'm a big reader, but I like to ask myself, like, why did this person write this book? Like, where was it coming from? I'm very interested in the creative journey as well. What was bubbling inside them that they felt they just had to put something to paper and then to disseminate like this information? So, like, why did you write this book, and what was, what was looking to come outside of you? What was the urge to put whatever you were feeling to paper?
I really actually wrote that book because I mentor a lot of young humans. I actually wrote that for young entrepreneurs.
I like their name. I like that we're calling them young humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fitting.
This is, again, it's one of my callings. I know it's the work that I'm here to do is like work with young humans. So I actually wrote that book for 8 laws to create entrepreneurial success. Obviously, in South Africa, we've got massive unemployment issues, youth unemployment. Globally, we know that's growing. And I'm someone that doesn't like spending my time on complaining about the status quo. I just use my energy to go and fix it. And so one of these things was that. It was just about actually empowering youth around how to create success, because I know what it's like to be there when you're 16 or 18 and you got these ideas but you're not quite sure how to actualize it. And then what I started to find is actually the work started resonating with everyone, because it's kind of these 8 laws that are everyone knows, but I'm just bringing the perspective back again to you. So it's stuff like do it now, stop procrastinating, how are you using your time, are you just not taking any action because you're being distracted. The final law for me, which I love, which is the power of generosity, and not thinking that every time we're giving something, we're actually, losing something. Understand the opposite is true. So it's almost connecting with, I'm finding, all humans, and that was really to create a purpose. And then just wanting to do something that isn't overly serious and philosophical, I've built big businesses, our agency is a big Pan-African, working in the US, working in Europe. I mean, we've built a big business. I've worked with a lot of big businesses, and I almost wanted to just distill those 8 laws. It's kind of like simple nuggets that I've seen building my own businesses and working with the best to help create success.
And I imagine for young humans, you don't want to intimidate them with lots of philosophy and lots of reading. And this feels like a pocketbook. It's really colorful. It looks really, I just only got my hands on it now, so I didn't get a chance to read it, but I'm definitely going to read it. But it just looks really attractive, and it's got these like short snippets of things you can carry with you. And I love that even just how it's put together would attract an 18-year-old me, to say like, oh, what's this about? And, and I think, I always say get them young. I think there's a gap there for, like you said, you're 18, you're bubbling with ideas, but you don't know where to start because you still feel like maybe I used to feel like that. Like maybe when I'll start my business when I'm 30. I used to say that. And gosh, if someone gave me, I guess, a hustle hack, or if someone gave me a book that didn't feel as intimidating, it's like, oh no, like you can do this and you can do this and you can start now. Lord knows where my business would be right now. But anyway, it's never too late. I'm still excited to build a business. So yeah. So Lisa, where can we find this book, firstly? And if we just want to also follow you or get to know you more, where can we find you?
Yeah, so that book is on Amazon.
Okay.
There, you can also DM me for local copies. We do have some local copies.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then social Lisa underscore, let me just check here. I think it's Lisa J.
Oh, don't worry. We'll put the handles in the
Lisa
video
J
as well.
underscore Alton. Lisa J underscore Alton. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, reach out. I'm always available for any support anybody is looking for, or, you know, advice. You can find me there.
Fantastic. So we always end this podcast by, I always say I'm honoring the interviewer in me. I can't help but just talk to a person without having them ask me questions back, because I think I'm just wired that way. I believe in, like, you know, exchanging ideas and energy. So we try to end with questions from the guests to me, and we limit it to 3, but it can be 1, it can be 2, or it can be 3. Yeah, depending on how many questions you have. So Lisa, do you have any questions for me?
Well, I'd love to know about your path that you're on right now. It feels like you're moving into something that maybe took you a little bit out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
How's that journey been to take you to where you are?
So my path right now feels very transitionary, and it's transition in a lot of things. I wish I was transitioning in just one area, which would be like career, but I feel like I'm transitioning like in life. I feel like I'm in that space where you know something's changing and you're not sure what yet, and you can't really see, you know. And as a person that has always had a plan, it's a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm also just like working and meditating on being grounded and being okay that I'm going through a transition. So I'm going through a transition in all areas of my life. That's one thing. But on the work side, or on the business side, or on the purpose side, I'm also intentionally trying to break out of being one thing. I think I started out as many things. When I was younger, I was interested in people, and people in their expansiveness, not just people, like the career translates into HR, but I was interested in gifts and talents of all sorts of humans. So creative people, you know, people in media, actors, you know, musicians, people that are working in the corporate space, you know, people that are in university just figuring out. I was always interested in people, but I think I started to limit myself to just saying, okay, my career, my love for people translated into HR, so I'm going to do HR. But now I'm kind of going back to young Chipo, who was interested in all sorts of people.
Beautiful.
In all sorts of people and their gifts. So I'm trying to break out of being one thing and starting to work with people from all sorts of backgrounds and see how I can create businesses out of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful to bring that to the world. Okay, what other one? So, what is the one thing you're wishing for that's not yet there? You know, we all have that. When we have the time to daydream, we have that thing. What's yours?
That's a really good question. The one thing I'm wishing for that's not yet there is my space, you know? I'm wishing for, and this is my space in terms of a home, I think. I think I've been like go. And yes, I live in a pretty space, but I think I'm not yet in my space. And this is a space where I live with my family. So I think that's the one thing I'm wishing for is having a family, but also it feeling like my space. you know.
So now what
Yeah.
action are you going to take? Now I'm coaching you here.
Listen, I've been coached on this podcast before, and I'm not falling for that. What action am I going to take? I think I'm taking actions. I've been very sort of on the more like I've been visualizing my space a lot, my space and my family a lot. I'm also just being very intentional about working more on my relationship with my partner. So we are in that, we kind of get to that space together, if that makes sense. So spending more time on being a whole human, because I think that space will come if I'm whole. Because when I vision that space, I vision it as being a whole human. So I'm working hard on being whole. But also trying to work really hard to make the money that funds the space.
Sounds like you're there.
So I think
You're on
I'm
your
there.
way.
I can't touch it tangibly, but even when I visualize, I try to visualize with the feeling that I'm already there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, wishing you lots of grace and abundance and manifestation around it.
Thank you. Thank
the
you.
power of when you're really using this emotion and the visualization together.
Yeah.
Is what creates, because the emotion is what carries the energy, right?
This is what I'm trying to trust and believe, because meditation was actually a tool that my coach through I started with an executive coach. He's still my coach, thank God. I don't know what I would do without a coach. But he introduced meditation to me. I didn't think it would actually change my life the way it did. I was thinking I needed a productivity coach and I needed someone to help with time management and all these things. But my coach came in and helped me slow down and helped me. He introduced me to an app and said, you start meditating. And I'm still very surprised how much it's affected different areas in my
Beautiful.
life. So even the visualization is as a result of seeing that meditating actually works.
Wow. Keep it going. I saw
Thank
that
you.
yesterday with the young humans. They were shy to do it. And I said, guys, let's just let whoever wants to do this process do it. And we had 300 kids. And they all just got in their zone. You just felt the energy of this room shift,
Amazing.
And they'd gone from feeling like overwhelmed to just being centered. So
And that's
yeah,
exactly
it's so
what it
powerful.
does. Yeah. And like I said, get them young. I think that was a powerful thing you did for them yesterday. Because if 30 out of the 300 take that on, I think that will change their lives forever. And starting that in your first year of university, it's a powerful gift.
Beautiful work.
Yeah. I know your type of human, Lisa. You and I can talk forever. I get your vibe, and I've had a wonderful time just not just getting to know you, but just also learning a lot. I think I've learned so much from you just today. I can't wait to read your book and to just follow you on your journey as well, because it also feels like you're on a journey. So good luck with that, and thank you for coming to the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, and best of luck for your journey.
Thank you.
So
if you want a copy of The Hustle Hack, please DM Lisa. We'll put her social media handle down here, so you make sure you can DM her and see where you can get the book locally. And thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of the Talent Whisperer podcast. It's always a pleasure to get to connect with you all. If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure you subscribe to this channel, you like and leave us a comment, and also listen on all our other platforms. Follow us there as well. So thank you so much. Cheers.